Ghostwire Tokyo. I have to say this one caught my attention when it was first revealed, presenting itself as a combination of supernatural stylized combat and an intriguing protagonist. Most of us have come to know the video game Japan through the Yakuza series and maybe even a little Persona, so color me intrigued at the prospect of a first-person, open-world, supernatural horror game with action elements. If you know anything about Japanese mythology and folklore, you'll know that it's extensive and multifaceted, stretching back to 712 AD and possibly before that time period. An abundance of inspiration lay at the feet of any would-be game developers who could tackle such an expansive history. Tango Gameworks with Ghostwire Tokyo looks like a good attempt to bring the mythology to life in a video game format. So let's find out how the game did. Without further ado, here is the Ghostwire Tokyo review. Enjoy. Right off the bat, we are introduced to a spectacular cutscene, albeit the game was stuttering due to a high GPU load. After some quick adjustments to the graphics settings, I was good to go. Immediately the sense of atmosphere hit me, followed swiftly by haunting enemies. It was refreshing to see such intricate designs based on Japanese mythology. Each enemy looked great, fully fleshed out for the virtual world, and each having their own unique animations, some of which created a palpable sense of fear and dread in earlier parts of the game. To add to the immersion within the Japanese mythology, each enemy has their own detailed description of their origin and behaviors, which can be expected after you encounter them for the first time. The walker enemy type is one which you'll see frequently, a tall, slender-like enemy with a suit which is representative of the monotonous grind of the work culture that is the center point of the Japanese pride. These former humans turned into these maleficent spirits are the hearts of the punished, pushed to exhaustion by their work, and serve as a constant reminder of the hamster wheel that life can be. Another enemy which is quite daunting to see for the first time is the Forlorn. Its description reads, "Born from the sorrows of an abused child." Seeing them merrily skip around Tokyo's streets trying to fight off the melancholia of existence can be a harrowing experience. Tokyo looks beautiful in 4K, with ray tracing on. The frequent rain causes puddles to form on the floor, which then reflect these prodigious skyscrapers that litter the Tokyo horizon. Eerie, supernatural fog sits on the edges of the map, adding to a sense of dread wherever you go. In short, Tango Gameworks did an excellent job at bringing out the nuances of Tokyo, whether it be neon-lit signs, or the pedestrian crosswalk, or even just the hustle and bustle of small businesses. All these things add to immersion. The game, being in first person, only lends to that immersion. If it were not for all the supernatural horrors running around and a plethora of outfits littered on the streets, you'd think that you're on vacation. Now we are on to the weakest part of Ghostwire Tokyo, so I'll go through the good stuff first. Without a doubt, the gameplay of Ghostwire Tokyo is flashy. Among the sprawling heights of Tokyo, you'll encounter new forms of magic in the form of wind, fire and water. Using this magic, you'll combat enemies called visitors, which are essentially made up of creatures from Japanese mythology. At an equal amount, you encounter more creatures from mythology through quirky, interesting side quests that often lead to the unlock of cosmetics, case files and even items that help your level progression. The side quests are often short and snappy. You'll make quick work of them and earn a steady stream of income. As you progress, you'll level up and acquire skill points, which will then be used to upgrade your skill tree. Now these skills vary from the ability to glide across the city, or adding new perks to the element of magic that you're using. The skill tree is by no means extensive, but there is enough to keep it interesting while you progress, and that's pretty much where the fun stuff ends. Unfortunately, the combat is the epitome of monotonous. You'll use the same 3 spells in a bow to discard enemies. It's clunky, inefficient, and often at times it feels unresponsive. You'll fire mostly wind spells, as these are your most numerous in quantity. The animations are visually appealing, but the impact of spells feels almost weightless at times. I never felt powerful in this game. Enemies are sponges, which means I spend most of my time sneaking around for the stealth elimination. It doesn't help that although the enemies have fantastic designs, they're undermined by the fact that there is such little variety in the enemy variants. The first few times you see these enemies, you might be creeped out but eventually they are so numerous the game loses all tension and the palpable air of dread dissipates. The difference in the height of my tension is stark in contrast. The little variety in enemy types combined with the lackluster boss design makes for an incredibly dull combat experience, unfortunately. Admittedly, I didn't know how well they would pull off the story in this game, but I'm happy to announce that the story is well written, tightly knit, and has impact to it. You'll play as Akito, you somehow end up dead. Something happens. You then seek out your sister, who is in hospital in a coma. The thing is, the city's been overrun with an ominous fog and everyone seems to be missing from Tokyo. The cast of characters really set the premise for the story, but unfortunately they come up just short when it comes to delivering a decisive emotional moment in the final section of the game. The small stories you encounter have a certain panache to them. They are excellently well crafted in areas that are usually much smaller than the open world, and that lends credence to the fact that smaller environments allow for more scripted approach, and this is evident throughout the smaller sections of the game. These also double as a way to increase the size of your in-game encyclopedia. Experiencing small parts of Japanese mythology alongside small collectibles, you can eventually build an entire story that is separate from the main campaign. So when it comes to video games, there are a few rules that we can follow in order to maximize performance. 1. Turn down shadows. 2. Turn off depth of field. 3. Turn down reflections. I mention these 3 specifically because they are the most intensive graphic settings for Ghostwire Tokyo. Now I considered putting a side-by-side comparison for graphic settings, but instead I'll let the pros handle it. Link in the description. Let's talk about my experience with the game. Ghostwire Tokyo is a bit of a resource hog, I have to be honest. The screen space reflections look astounding, and the fog effects are front and center as one of the pivotal parts of the game experience, both in story and performance. With that said, most of the outdoor gameplay sections can suffer performance-wise due to these 2 things that I have mentioned. Throw in shadows and you've got yourself a GPU moving at the speed of a donkey with 3 legs. Interior locations performed much better on a whole, even with multiple enemies and effects, and the game looks great, usually, but it definitely requires the settings to be tweaked in order to get the best experience for yourself. So sound design is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, you have great voice acting which permeates into smaller parts of the game. You could be walking down a road you've never been down, and Akito will comment on it in a realistic fashion. These small tidbits make the experience a bit more immersive, which is important if a game plays in first person. On the other hand, the sound effects for combat feel generic. Nothing feels impactful or meaningful. Magic hits the target, and the sound almost fizzles out. Along with the sponginess of the enemies, combat yet again feels mundane. On a separate note, so to speak, you can collect different music tracks in-game through these vendors called Nekomata, which are basically cute floating cats who fleece you out of your hard-earned coin. These tracks that you collect are surprisingly well made, each providing their own flavor, whether it be tropical house, techno, or drum and bass. There are many tracks to collect, and I enjoyed them so much that I tried to Shazam them, but alas, no result found. I hope they release them soon. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit unwell. I've lost my voice. I've been feeling sick for the last couple of days, but I really wanted to get this review out to you, so here it is. Forgive me for any audio inconsistencies. Ghostwire Tokyo had tremendous ambition. The Tokyo city itself was hustling and bustling, even without the NPCs, and the enemy design was just phenomenal. I could really feel what Tango were going for here. Now, the thing that let it down the most was the combat. It felt slow and unresponsive. It was just a bore by the end of the game, and it just really hindered the experience for me. I can't recommend this at full price, unfortunately. I would wait for a sale or wait for it to go on Xbox Game Pass. You can find this on all the major platforms. It is a good experience, but definitely wait for a sale, or at least until they bring out some more patches or maybe an interesting DLC that you can play through. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you for supporting the channel. Some of you guys have suggested that I set up a Patreon, and I have linked that in the description. It's basically a way to donate to the channel each month, just a little bit, and it helps the channel keep going. It allows me to provide more content to you. I already have quite a few patrons, and it's just been such a blessing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I'm so grateful, honestly. Anyways guys, I should probably end this video before I completely lose my voice. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next breakdown. Bye.